Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation series. I'm thrilled today to have Colin Garrett here with me. This is a new for me. I have never had a professional racing driver on here before, so I am thrilled to kind of dive into Colin's world and learn more about what he's been doing since the age of 15. But Colin, thank you so much for being here, and I'm gonna kick it over to you to let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Colin Garrett. I'm a professional race car driver. I used to race in NASCAR, the NASCAR Xfinity Series and trucks, and now I'm currently racing in sports cars. So
Okay.
racing GT4 America and TC America, Touring Car America,
Okay.
and I just won a championship in that this past year. And yeah, that's a little bit about me there. So.
Nice. Why no NASCAR?
Just mostly funding wise. Like I would love to go back and do that, but it's so expensive to race NASCAR. So made a little bit more sense to go over to sports cars for right now. Maybe one day go back to NASCAR. I still run like a race or two in NASCAR. Like I ran a truck race this past year and attempted an Xfinity race, but we ended up missing the show because it was raining or it's not raining. We went out on wet tires and this whole
Yeah.
ordeal. But anyway, so yeah, but yeah.
You have won 8 pole awards. You've been on 35 podiums. You've had 20 wins and 2 championships. I kind of introduced you, started this when you were 15, which is not as young as people would think. Like people start racing far before that. What got you into racing and what has kept you going for the last 10 years?
Yeah, we don't really know what got me into racing. Yeah, so our best guess is that my our babysitter down the road, I would go over to their house, and they're a nice Southern family, so they watch NASCAR on the weekends,
Nice.
and so that's like our only guess that I kind of picked it up from there. However, their favorite driver is Tony Stewart, and I ended up liking Jeff Gordon, so we don't
Okay.
know where that came from, but yeah, so. I guess it just, the bug kind of grew from there. I had a four-wheeler growing up and I'd built like a little racetrack around our field and I'd like pretend that was a racetrack. And as the years went on, NASCAR lowered the minimum age to 14 for our local track here called South Boston Speedway. It's a little less than a half mile short track here. And I was like, oh man, I want to go do that. And they had like this class called the pure stock division, which was like the lowest division. There's like little four-cylinder race cars. And I convinced my parents to at least go look at a car. And sure enough, we ended up getting it. And kind of the rest was history there. We took it to Sellers Racing here in Danville, Virginia,
Okay.
where Peyton Sellers, he's a local legend. He was my hero growing up and we took it to them and I kind of started racing for them from there on and made actually my first professional start with them in the NASCAR Can-Am Pro Series. I
Okay.
guess 4 years later. So they kind of carried me to that point where they could no longer, I
Yeah.
went off to race for a truck team and Xfinity team after that. So it was really cool to kind of race with my childhood heroes. So yeah.
Was it kind of like a pinch me moment? Like, what in the world? You're kind of looking around, like, what in the world is happening right now? How am I out here with these guys?
A little bit, yeah. In the beginning.
Yeah.
After that, it just kind of got to the point where it's like I'm going to the racetrack for a job. Like this is what I'm here to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And yeah, because people always talk about that, like imposter syndrome and everything. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I believe I belong here and stuff. So I
I
don't
love
know. Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's just my thing. Like I'm there to do a job, and afterwards I'll sit back and think about it. Like, oh man, that's pretty cool. I wish I took that in a little bit more. But in the moment, I'm there to work. So.
Do you classify yourself at all as like an adrenaline junkie? Like, what is the adrenaline? Does it do anything for you when you're racing at all?
Not really. I actually really don't like it. Like we'll be getting a car and we'll be getting ready to race or something, and I know we're in a cluster scenario of just like cars everywhere that I don't want to be around. And once we go racing, it's fine, and I figure it out. But I don't like that feeling at all. It's not one of my best feelings. But I'm also a mountain biker. I only like riding downhill stuff, which is like the crazy gnarly. You take a ski lift to the top and go down a mountain. So I don't know, but I use that as kind of like racing too, because when I'm in that mentality, like what best tires will work for this. What, I'm just always like trying to be faster in it. So, um, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what I would classify myself as. It's not
Okay.
adrenaline junkie because I don't know. Like I do all adrenaline sports, but I don't like it. So.
In terms of training, like what is the preparation look like coming up to a race?
Yeah, so I do go to the gym a whole bunch. I have a personal trainer here in Danville. Go over there, see him. I'll probably actually go there right after this, and do that. I was gonna try to go to before, but oh well.
Yeah,
Um,
you can
yeah,
tell from my wet hair that I tried to squeeze my workout
yeah,
in right before this. Yep.
yeah. So I'll go do that afterwards. But obviously the gym and stuff is a big thing. And then I use this platform called iRacing. It's
Okay.
a virtual simulation deal, and you can get on there and basically go to any racetrack in the world and almost any car in the world. Yeah, so I can get on there. It's real enough that I can practice a good amount.
Gotcha.
Um, it's not the real thing, but it's still like, at least if I've never been to a racetrack before, I can at least know where I'm going when I get there.
Gotcha.
And a lot of the signs, if it's been up to date and everything, a lot of the billboards and everything will be the same. So if I'm going down a straightaway or something, I need a mark for a breaking point or something like that. I can be like, oh, there's a Menard sign or something on the side. So yeah, it's kind of neat to see that. And when you get there in real life, it's like, oh man, it's like it is there. So yeah, there's a few of the racetracks too where you can like pull in the garage area and stuff and kind of drive around. So you just kind of get acclimated to it. But yeah, when I was racing in NASCAR, the team I was racing for was partnered up with TRD, Toyota Racing Development. And they have this like $25 million sim over there. I think they've since come out with a new generation of it. And you'd go and you literally get into a race car, like it's in a room, and you'd get into a race car, you'd strap in, you're wearing your helmet, your harness, like everything, all the buttons and shifters and everything work in the car.
Yeah.
And the whole room is like this screen that wraps around. There's massive speakers in there, and you put in these 3D glasses inside your helmet, and you start like pulling off, and your brain is like, "What is happening right now?" Because like you're in North Carolina, but
Yeah.
you're pulling off at Michigan International Speedway or something like that. It is the freakiest feeling ever. So obviously don't have one of those at my house, but it is super cool to use that kind of stuff for the races.
That would be the best basement I would have ever seen in a house if you did.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. It'd be
downstairs
pretty
just
cool.
absolutely chilling. Um,
Yeah.
do you do work with hand-eye coordination, or is that just a separate part of, a completely different side of racing?
I do. I should probably do it a lot more. I have a sports psychologist and a performance coach
Okay.
that work with me doing that kind of stuff. He's given me a whole bunch of tools for it. I have not done it as much as I should probably, but I actually in the last week I've started doing a little bit more of it. Um, I don't know. I just go through spurts. So one of his biggest tools is like this Nintendo DS, and there's an old game on there from way back in the day. He was like, I don't know who made this, but this is like one of the best hand-eye coordination like things ever. And so I'll get on there, and I was made for it.
Yeah.
And I just go around and just have like a little stylus. It feels like I'm back in 2008 or something again doing it, but it's really cool and it helps a lot. I mean, you can definitely see a difference at the end of it. And yeah, there's just some other tips and tricks that he does. I can't exactly say that we do, but I don't want to give away all his secrets. But
All your secrets.
um,
Okay.
yeah. So, but it is a big part of what we do, and he comes to the racetrack with me every week, and we work on it, especially before I get into a car. We'll be doing some exercises and stuff, and it's the generic stuff that you see
Yeah.
also too, like. I don't know if you ever watched the Formula One stuff where the tennis ball, yeah, exactly that, yeah. So the tennis ball stuff, or any of that deal. So I'm like I said, I'm a big mountain biker, so I normally have a bike at the racetrack too, and they'll have me like literally come to a stop on the bike and like balance it and stuff before I get in the car, just so like all those nerves are just woken up and ready to go. So yeah.
Nice. What does a typical year look like in terms of racing for you? Like, are you a race every month? Or what is kind of your schedule look like for racing?
So when I started racing in 20, well, okay, we'll say real racing in 2016, because that pure stock year in 2015 didn't really count. We ran like the races at South Boston, but it wasn't really a big deal.
Yeah.
In 2016, I ran like fifth. 16, 17 races, something like that. It was pretty relaxed. It was probably over 14 weekends or something like that. Some of those weekends may have had double headers. 2017 it amped up a whole lot, and we went up to like 30 races that year. And I was still in high school, and so don't really know how I was allowed to go through high school at that point because going to school in South Boston, the racetrack was only like 5 minutes from the
Right.
high school. So my team, which was based out of Danville, they would just text me like, "Hey, we're headed to the track with your car right now. Meet you there." And I'm like in the middle of geography class or something, and I'll be like, "Gotta go!" like so.
See ya.
That happened. Yeah, that happened a lot, and it got to the point where all the principals and teachers like they knew who I was and they kind of understood like that was the deal. And it wasn't the first time they've had race car drivers go through there, because South Boston is right there. And Jeb Burton, who's a who races in Xfinity Series right now, is the son of Ward Burton. They're from South Boston too. So, and he'd gone through the same school stuff. And so everyone kind of understood, so, and then, so I ran like 30 plus races that year, got to my senior year, which was the fall of 2017. And I ended up being able to graduate early so I could just, go
Nice.
on and do my thing. Shouldn't have been allowed to at all. My grades were fine, but it was like I missed like so many days. You were allowed
Yeah.
to miss like 18 days for the entire year, and I missed like 18 days like a month. So it was wild. But principal, he was like, "You're cool, good." So got
Nice.
out of there, and the next year we just went full out and raced a ton of races. Same thing the next year. COVID obviously slowed it down a whole bunch. And I got to the point where I was running like the high stuff, like the Xfinity Series and stuff, and
Yeah.
to go run those races, it was like $125,000 a week, and that is pretty crazy. So obviously the budget wasn't quite there to run all those races. When the local stuff, your budget is like that for the entire year, where this is like a week. So it got crazy, and so it kind of teetered off a whole bunch. I think in like 2021 or something like that, I ran like 7 races, 8 races maybe total. Like it just slowed down a whole lot, and it was
Yeah.
weird. But in 2022, when I made the transition back to sports car racing, I kind of amped it back up. We're only racing 7 weekends
Okay.
a year. However, when we get there on like a Tuesday and we leave on Monday. So we're there for an entire week. And actually, one of my NASCAR buddies and I uh, we were mapping it, or not mapping it out, but adding it all up, and we're like, I wonder how many days like I'm at the racetrack versus you guys. Ended up being like exactly the same, because NASCAR they go on like Friday, Saturday, and we're there for an entire week. So
Yeah.
ended up, yeah, like you can do a month or a one race a month with that schedule, because it's an entire week, so
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
drawn out.
Now, you just said 2021 you made the transition back to sports cars. Like what made you want to transition back to that? What
So
okay.
yeah, this is my first time ever in sports cars. It was weird. So I don't know what got me into sports car racing. I started watching Formula One when I was like
Yeah.
15, 16, something like that. I just flipped on the TV one night and Formula One was on there, and I kind of like blew my mind. I was like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
the coolest thing ever." And there's a documentary. It was after it was like a practice session in Abu Dhabi, which is what I turned on. And then after that was a documentary called One, and I watched that, and it was just like, "This is the coolest thing ever." And I just dove headfirst into that. When I got to South Boston like the next year, like I kind of thought I was like Lewis Hamilton or whatever. Like I had the white fire suit, I had like the white JBL headphone. Like I thought I was the man. Like
Yeah.
that's just I had the white racing shoes and everything. Everything was white. Like I did not look like I belonged at South Boston. And that's kind of become my look for like the last however many years I've been running. I've run white fire suits basically every year. It's like I try not to have a white suit now because they just look the same everywhere. If you open
Yeah.
up my closet, I've got like 25 suits in a closet, and it's just like white everywhere. So there's like maybe six or seven non-white suits,
Yeah.
but that's one of my goals, to not have as many white suits. But yeah, and so I just that's it drew me to that kind of stuff. Obviously seeing Formula One, I'd start watching like rally, watch sports cars, obviously having Virginia International Raceway VIR right here by the house too. So we have South Boston 15 minutes and VIR 20 minutes. Like
Yeah.
we're right in the middle. I'd go over there and watch the IMSA races, and watch those guys, and it was super cool. And my buddies are always like, "Oh, do you see yourself, or do you think you could get into a sports car deal?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know even how to start." Well, my dad had this friend, his name was Todd Brown, and they started Edward Jones together like
Right.
40 years ago. Probably not 40 years ago, but 40, we'll say 40.
Okay.
And he they started together. They were great friends for years and years and years. They kind of broke apart. His buddy left Edward Jones, and he went and started his own deal. And they were still kind of friends, but didn't see each other as much. So when I started racing and we were around like 2018, I think, my dad was like, "Hey, I've got this buddy that, like, I know he races stuff, but I'm not quite sure what." And he's like, let's go have lunch with him one day. So we drove up to Culpeper, Virginia, and went to go see Todd. And he raced BMWs. It was super cool. He had like some BMW E30s, which is my dream car, some
Yeah.
2002s, 2002 turbos, which are actually from like the 70s, but their name is weird. So it is yeah, he had the cool stuff. He raced some racing BMWs too. So I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. It was whatever. And so a couple weeks later, I guess months later, we were up at New Jersey Motorsports Park for a NASCAR Can-Am Pro Series race, and the BMW club was there,
Okay.
kind of running with us. Like we'd run a session, and then BMW would run after us or something like that. So um, they ended up being there with that, so they came over to,
Yeah.
like, hang out with us during the weekend and see the cars and see the NASCAR stuff. And uh, that was kind of it. Like we
Right.
saw him a couple times at VIR, and that was about it that year. And then I didn't see him for a few more years. Well, in 2021, I was sitting in my apartment. It's probably like 11 o'clock at night or whatever. I'm sitting there scrolling through Facebook, and I see this guy on Facebook. He was wanting a driver for this TCR race car,
Okay.
um, for, I can't remember what race it was, but it was just like a fun endurance series, but it was like a serious car. So I messaged him on Facebook. I was like, "Hey man, what's the deal about this? It seems kind of cool." And he ended up calling me at like 11 o'clock at night, and we talked for like 45 minutes. And turns out I couldn't end up doing that race, but I was like, "Well, keep me in mind if there's any races later
Yeah.
on down the road." And I think it was around like October, November. I get a call from him, and he's like, "Hey, we're going to Circuit of the Americas down in Austin, Texas,
Okay.
and I just got brand new BMW GT4s. I guess not brand new; they were used, but they're the newer generation of them. And Daniel Suarez is coming to be a co-driver down there. Do you want it? Who's a cup driver?" And he was like, "Do you want to come down?" And I was like, "Yeah, that seems cool." So went down there to run this race car that I'd never seen before in my life. I didn't know anything about it. All like looking at the buttons on the steering wheel, I was like, "This is insane." And I walked into the garage area, and lo and behold, who's beside us is Todd Brown with Rooster Hall Racing, their team. And I was like, "Oh, what's up, guys?" Like I walked over, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "I don't really know. I'm running that thing over there." And so we kind of, did our weekend. And a couple weeks later, Todd calls us, and he's like, "Hey, we're going to Sebring down in Florida. If you guys want to come down and run this BMW M2 with us." And I was like, "Yeah, that seems cool." So I go down to Florida to run this BMW M2, and it was like, this would just be fun to
Yeah.
like keep myself in the car while I'm waiting for a NASCAR deal or something. And he ended up like halfway through the weekend, him, my dad, my sports psychologist who'd been working with me since the NASCAR days, who actually comes from sports cars, so this is more like fitting for him.
Right.
And then Todd, he had a pro driver the few years before that. His name was Johann Schwartz. Google him, kind of a big deal. He, I don't know if you ever saw the 8-hour drift that BMW did where they had to refuel. That was him. So yeah, so they were all there, and I'd been running for about 3 days at this point, and I saw them all in a group, and like for my dad to be in a group with these guys, I knew like something was up. And they come over to me afterwards, and they're like, "Hey, so you're pretty good at this. Do you want to go TC racing this year?" And I was like, "What is that?" They're like, "Well, you're basically going to run the same car. It'll be a little different, but it'll be this and we'll race all over the country and stuff. And I was like, why not? That seems pretty cool. So we shot into hybrid drive and we had like a month and a half to get ready for the first race. They got a car from Texas, got it up there, got prepped. We flew out there to Sonoma and finished like fifth and sixth that first week, but I won in my third start and went on to win like 6 more races that year, missed the championship by 2 points. The following year, I moved up to GT4 America, I guess this past year in 2023, and Johann Schwartz ended up being my co-driver. So it was cool to have that kind of come full circle. So
you were just recognized as BMW's 12th best driver globally.
yeah, that was super awesome. We get to fly out to Munich to the BMW factory, and we had this big banquet and stuff. It was really cool. Obviously the top drivers in the world were all there, and they had some of their factory guys that were there as well that we got to kind of mingle around with. And yeah, I mean, to be 12th in the world, obviously I wanted better. I was a little disappointed when they called my name that early. I was like, oh man, but it was still super cool to be up on stage with kind of the best of the best.
On the flip side of driving, like I do want to just hit on your 1111 veteran project and just
Mhm.
hear how, like, why this project, why this certain cause for you.
Yeah, so the 1111 Veteran Project. Both of my brothers are active army. Or I guess one's active army, one just got out. I got to change that because he just got out now. So I always say both of my brothers are active army. One just got out though, and I've had a family member in every major U.S. conflict, like all the way back to the Revolutionary War. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. So my brothers are my half brothers. Their dad was a United States Army Ranger.
Okay.
So yeah, he was kind of like the shit. So
Yeah.
um, growing up with that, and then their grandfather was a Navy pilot in Vietnam and stuff. So like it was just kind of always we'd been immersed in it kind of our whole lives. My brothers lived with me, so they're like all military stuff, and obviously being the youngest, I'm gonna just do whatever they do at that point. So we played the whole army thing, all the way through
Yeah.
our childhood and stuff. But as we got older, my brother went off. He went to military school. Then he went up to VMI, Virginia Military Institute, commissioned in the Army, did his whole thing. And my other brother kind of did the same thing. But it was just still always like there in the background. Obviously the military was just always a thing. So when I first started racing, I partnered up with this company called Mission 22, and they're basically just a company to stop veteran suicide.
Yeah.
And a few years later, I'd been kind of doing stuff with them, but we were trying to like do some events and stuff, but never really worked out. And we ended up working or finding out about this company called Race for Heroes, which was based out at VIR here locally. And I was like, oh, well, let's go see what they've got going on. So we went over there. It's run by a bunch of special forces guys, our United States Army Special Forces, and met them. They used racing as kind of like therapy for guys getting out of the military and stuff, and trying to find their path, back
Yep.
back in the world. And they might be losing that brotherhood kind of deal, when they get on the team. So they can come to Racing for Heroes. They can work in the shop and just screw around with the guys and stuff, and
Yeah.
kind of have that brotherhood aspect again. So we partnered up with them in early 2019. The more we did, our name kind of got out there that we're doing that, and what we were doing with the race cars, we would promote them on the race cars. And then we started working with some other companies. The first one after that was the Rosie Network, which it's run by a lady who she was a mill spouse, and she kind of helps veteran entrepreneurs and mill spouse entrepreneurs. So we partnered up with them, and then it just started growing
Yeah.
exponentially after that. I mean, it went huge. So it got to a point where it's like we can't have all these people in the car like every week. Like there's not enough space.
Yeah.
And so that's when, and they weren't doing a great job promoting themselves either. Like a lot of them, they just have a lot on their plate. So like we have them on track at Talladega, and like they're just not working it like as well as they should have. So what we ended up doing was we created the 1111 Veteran Project. And what that did was it kind of became like, actually, I was just in a podcast the other day, and this guy came up with this phrase. We were kind of like the hotel liaison for veterans. So they can come to us, and we kind of send them where they need to go. So now we're with so many companies now. We have access to like service dogs. We have access to computer, not engineering, but like software and stuff, like people to like teach them how to do that. I'll use all the programs and stuff. We obviously have the entrepreneur stuff. We have the racing stuff. We have, I know I'm missing a whole bunch of other people. We have a comedy group that we just partnered up with where they use kind of same thing as Racing for Heroes, but they use comedy as their, kind
Very
of,
cool.
yeah, as their source. So it's cool. And now people come to us and we're like, what do you need? What do you want? And we can send you in whichever direction that you need. So
I think that's a great cause, and especially, I mean, we're seeing so much, uh, so many men and women coming out of the services and just having trouble reacclimating back into civilian life. And you hear
yeah.
so much right now about just suicide and things like that. So I think as many resources and great resources like this one and helping them get back on their feet and, like you were saying, find a path is
Yeah.
extremely important today. And I think as much as we can possibly do for our veterans is extremely important.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm around the Racing for Heroes guys, so they have a for-profit side called RFH Tactical, and it's we train. I work with them, and we train special operations guys. We train missionaries. We train all sorts of stuff and tactical driving. Obviously, special forces guys train them in like the shooting and all that. But I do all the driving portion stuff for them. And but there's guys like some of the other instructors will come in, and they're guys that have gone through the Racing for Heroes kind of like
Yeah,
program of getting back, in that brotherhood.
that's awesome.
And this one recently, he was like my age, I think, and was just young, 23,
Yeah.
and he'd just been medically discharged out of the army because
Wow.
his stomach exploded in Poland, and he had to be like medevaced to Germany. It was in the hospital forever, and you know, kind of Racing for Heroes kind of saved his life. He came out there for like month or two or something like
Yeah.
that, and was hanging out with them and kind of got that brotherhood feeling again. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see that. And like I just don't me being around it all the time, like I don't see it as much,
Totally.
being there. But when we have a new guy come in and then he's like, oh yeah, this like really helped us, we're like, oh crap, it
Yeah.
is working. So
Yeah.
it's cool. Yeah.
The stories you hear are probably the most powerful thing that you could possibly, like, to hear that what you're doing or the projects that are going on and that you're a part of, like that stuff's the coolest shit to be able to hear, like, hey,
Yeah, yeah,
we are actually helping people is makes it all worth it.
for sure. Yeah.
Would you ever go do F1 with your fascination, and would you
Oh,
ever?
for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah, I would go to F1 in a heartbeat. Obviously, the field is very wealthy. You look at like
Yes.
15 out of the 20 drivers, they're all dads are like billionaires. So it's a little different there. But yeah, it's the road to F1 is so hard. And I
Yeah.
feel like I tried to when I first found out about F4, so the
Yep.
Formula 4 US Championship, I found out about that in like 2017, I guess. Actually, it was my championship year here in the local stuff at South Boston, and I I wanted to transition to that
Yeah.
at the end of the year. My dad was like, "We have so much money invested in your stock car career. We're not freaking changing completely and going and doing this." And I was like,
Yeah.
"But it seems cooler." So
But
we
Dad,
didn't do that. Yeah, so we didn't do that. Now that there's a US championship for F4 and stuff, I don't know how big it is. I know, USF 2000 is kind of bigger
yeah.
here, but I feel like you kind of have to start off in that. And it's so hard. You see so many guys that switch over to sports cars or NASCAR or something from that because they get to F3 or F2 or whatever, and they're like, well, there was no spot for me at the top because either it's Lewis Hamilton or whoever's filling that role already. They're obviously going to choose Lewis Hamilton or Sebastian Butler, or Max Verstappen, or any of those guys
Yes.
over a new kid, and then all the other seats are filled by kids that with rich dads. So it kind of it screws up the market over there. So a lot of guys come back, run sports cars. You look at the Rolex 24 field this year, and it was like ton of Formula One guys that kind of made it and then just fell back off and are racing IndyCar or sports cars now. So yeah,
I've loved to see so much so much more F1 coming over here because I think it's been such a European racing circuit over there. It's been cool to see more people get involved and get excited and have more interest around it, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I wish. The problem is, the Vegas one I wasn't actually that much of a shit show. Like the media kind of pumped out, like the European media made it seem worse than it was because obviously Europe hates America and like everything we have to do with Formula One and all that stuff. So they try to make it as bad as possible. Like, oh man, like they weren't ready for a manhole cover. It's like it happens every time F1 goes to
Yeah.
a street course that they pop open a freaking manhole cover. It happens every time. But I do wish, having saying that, I wish they would go to like a real racetrack instead of all these street courses. And they just announced like they're going to like Barcelona or whatever in the streets or something like that instead of the racetrack. But they might go back to the racetrack. It's weird, but everyone's like, stop going to street courses. It sucks. Like, it's just not the same. Like, go to an actual racetrack. And there's so many racetracks that they go to. But the problem with that in the U.S. is a lot of the racetracks are in bum fuck nowhere. So
Yeah.
you look at it and it's like, okay, let's say they go to Watkins Glen like they did back in the day. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever been to Watkins Glen, but that town is like 4,000 people and are not prepared for a Formula One event at all. Like, has one 2-lane road that runs down the middle and like no park. Like, it's not prepared for that at all.
Yeah.
We overwhelm them when we go there with like SRO or NASCAR or something like that. And it just destroys it. Same thing with Road America. Like, Road America, middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. It's a great racetrack, one of the top racetracks in the world. And there's nowhere to do it. Same thing, VIR. We're here in South Boston. Like, obviously, we have Raleigh an hour and a half away, but like,
Yeah.
you look at strictly the Americas, you have Austin, Texas, freaking 15 minutes away. Like, it's just, there's way more hotels and
100.
space to put people. So it's
Yeah.
just, I think having a Formula One race at a real racetrack in America is just gonna screw up the local economy and just overwhelm whatever town it's in.
Yeah.
And then the towns also, they're gonna be like, well, we see this as a big prospect, so we're gonna spend a whole bunch of money
Yeah.
to redo the town, and then Formula One could leave in like 2 seasons, and then they've spent all that money
Oh,
and nothing
no reason.
for it. So.
Yeah. Was there a learning curve for you in terms of technology used in the different cars when you made your transition? Like, is there an advancement and evolution that you've seen as well? Like, what's technology now today for?
Yeah, so like obviously in the NASCAR stuff, it's not as much, but when you get to like Xfinity and stuff, it actually gets pretty technical.
Okay.
Um, Arguably more technical than sports cars on the shop side, we'll say.
Okay.
So there's a lot more engineering and kind of like what you got to do to make those cars go fast, especially because they're all basically the same in NASCAR, and you're
Okay.
looking for that like small difference.
Yeah.
When you get to sports cars, those guys at the shop, like it was kind of interesting because like our GT4 car, we'd get it, and I'll go into details about the GT4 car in a minute, but we get it from factory, and it's
Okay.
pretty crazy. I mean, you look at it, technology is insane. I mean, it's basically a GT3 car now. I mean, it's wild. But like at the shop, like don't really do much to it. Like it's
Yeah.
just a normal car. They change the oil on it, they service some parts and stuff, and that's about it. Or NASCAR, they're rebuilding those things every week. They're making sure like every little thing is right. Yeah, they're changing like just tiny things around the sports car stuff. It's like, well, that's the factory thing, and that's what we run the rest of the year. So, but it gets in the setup stuff. It gets a little more and like how to go through the data and stuff on the sports car stuff. It changes a whole lot, and it's mostly different on the driving side. NASCAR, you have no data or
Okay.
telemetry or just like anything that goes into that. So you don't know. You're just going off your feeling. You
Yeah.
could be a horrible driver and whatever you're doing is just like making it work, but you don't know. It's
Yeah.
basically up to the driver. Like there's so many different driving styles and that stuff. Where you get into sports car stuff, and you can see literally every movement I make in that car based on like my feet, my hands, just like everything you can see on this graph. And so then we can go into that, and my engineers can be like, well, you're not doing this right or whatever, or you're not hitting the brake pedal like hard enough. One of the big things in sports cars is like we have so much braking power, you have to just use it all at once. Whereas NASCAR, it was like you kind of slowly kind of get into it. And sports cars, you just like I don't know how to, so if like you have a graph and this is like 0 and then you get on the brake, it would like shoot up.
Okay.
Uh, a lot of people that have like a little slow curve or whatever, if you're just driving a regular car or whatever, you
Yep.
want to basically like just straight up, like no movement at all. Just um, and then you can zoom in and see like the little tiny, like as soon as you
Yeah.
start getting on the brake pedal. And we had this engineer with us this past year. He's like, "You're still like getting into it." I'm like, "I don't know what you want me to do here. Like, I'm hitting it as hard as I possibly can." So it gets pretty crazy when you get into that stuff.
Yeah.
And then what you can do in the car, you can change himself. We have live like tire pressures and stuff in our car.
Cool. Okay.
We have different buttons and traction control settings and everything. And that's all changed from our new car was the G body BMW, and the F body, which is the generation from before this.
Okay.
That car, it was pretty basic in terms of like technology and stuff. It still was pretty crazy, but when you go from what BMW Motorsport made in 2019 versus their 2023 model, I mean, it's crazy. So
My last question for you, Colin, is just what are you looking forward to this year? What do you have coming up? What does 2024 look like for Colin?
I don't really know yet. That's the $1 million question. Literally, I guess. Um, yeah, I don't know. We're working on a few different things. It's
Okay.
funny because in this sport, you get offers, but you still have to pay. Like a team will be like, "Oh, we want you to come drive for us," but it's like, "We want you to pay to come drive for us," kind of deal. So it's a little funky that way, but um, you know, I have a ton of offers. Like I said, we're just trying to get funding right now. That's the big thing. So I have a couple offers from teams that I would 100% go to like right now. They're really good teams, really big teams, and we have a shot to win it all basically over there. But it's just a matter of getting the funding to be able to go over there. So it's the racing has just become such a weird sport, and it's not really recent. It's been happening since back in the Nicky Lauda in Formula One,
Yeah.
paid his way into the sport. So and that's just become the norm for racing now. So
Yep.
it's just difficult. You got to go find your own sponsorship and stuff, and
Yeah.
thankfully we just met a team owner that is like actually actively working for sponsorship for
Okay.
me slash himself, because it's like it makes sense because that money's going to him anyway. Why would he not try to go out and try to find sponsorship as well? So um so we'll see what happens. I don't really have anything planned right now.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm a big mountain biker though, and there are a bunch of mountain bike races throughout the year. So if we get to the point where I'm not gonna be in a race car this year, or
Yeah.
it's not looking like I'm gonna be in it full time, I'm probably gonna start racing bikes for a little bit,
Thanks.
just to kill time and get that bug out of me, and then we'll just continually work towards next year if nothing happens. But fingers crossed. I think we have a good chance of being Sonoma in April, so we'll see. But
Cool.
yeah,
Where's good mountain biking around you? Is there good?
not anywhere close.
Okay, I was
So
about to say, where in
yeah,
the world are you mountain biking around
yeah.
you?
There's actually pretty good single track like cross country trails in Danville, but I
Okay.
don't cross country ride. I mean, I try not to. Like if I'm just here in town, like I'll go over there and ride. Just and that honestly will keep you in shape more than anything else. But I like the downhill stuff. Ski lift takes you to the top. You're on
Yeah.
a big bike, you go down that, and you get more of a workout doing that than anything else. I mean, it's crazy. So you got to drive basically snowshoe West Virginia or Asheville, North Carolina, or somewhere like that. So um, yeah, nowhere close, and it's normally a thing. Like I've tried to do it a couple times in like a day, and it beats you out. You drive 4.5 hours up the snowshoe. You ride for 6-7 hours, then you
Yeah.
drive 4.5 hours back. It's a long day when you get back. So it's a bit difficult, but yeah, so
Yeah.
nowhere close.
Yeah.
So
I have family up in Lake Lore, North Carolina, and it's like
mhm.
beautiful, great mountains, and I'm like, you will never catch me biking around. I'm like, I'll walk, but I'm like, that is as good as you're gonna get because it is so skinny.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, my fear of heights, I'm like, this would not end well for me.
Yeah, that's I like bike parks a lot more, especially if you're going to be doing stuff like that,
Yeah.
because bike parks, and they're normally like ski resorts or something like that. So they have a dedicated crew, and their trails are pretty wide, so you have room for error relatively. unless you hit a tree or something like that. But like if you get off line a little bit, you're not going to go off the side of a mountain. Like I've ridden a little bit, like up in Roanoke and
Okay.
stuff like that. That you are literally on a little tiny trail
Yeah.
through the woods, and it's just a drop off next to you. And my 21st birthday, I went just by myself, and I was like, "This will be fun, something fun to do." I had nothing else to do that day, so and I was riding, and I crashed, and I went down like down the mountain. And my bike was like falling down the mountain. I had to like hold on the trees and like dig steps out and like pull my bike back up. Is pretty gnarly, but yeah. So I like a little bit wider trails. You get room for error and stuff, and yeah. So bike parks are normally the best option for that, and they're just maintained better. So
I'd be like, this is where I'm gonna die right here, is right here.
yeah, yeah. But that's also the thing. Like I'll go on like some hiking trails and like this would be more fun on a bike. So yeah,
I get that. I get that. Well,
yeah,
Colin, thank you so much for bringing me into your world and teaching me so much today. And I will have my eye out to see what racing has in store for you this year, and if not,
yeah,
what mountain biking you're doing. But I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your world with me.
yeah. Of course. Thank you for having me on. This has been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys do not follow Colin, I will have all of his socials down below. So please go give him a follow. But as always, I will see you guys back here next time. Bye, y'all.